And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at a game by a designer that I enjoy quite a bit. That's Vital Lacerda, who is the designer of Vinhos. Now, this is a game called CO2 by Stronghold Games, and it will play 1 to 5 players, and it's a pretty complex game. There's a lot going on. There's a little bit of a cooperative aspect in that you're trying to save the world from pollution, but you're generally competing to try and be the company that best saves the world or best provides green energy to different regions of the world and best gets expertise in these different types of energy. The game plays 1 to 5 players. There is a solo variant that I'm not going to cover, but plays up to 5. And I think is relatively simple to play once you learn how it works. Now, the video is going to probably be hard to follow. There's a lot going on, and it's a lot to teach in a short period of time. But real quick, I'll show you what you get inside the box and how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my final thoughts on it. So here you can see the setup for a 3-player game of CO2. Now, there's a lot going on here, and I know that, and I'm not going to be able to cover everything having to do with this game, but I've set up most of the board. What you're looking at here these are called carbon emission points, and these are going to be a currency that you spend throughout the game. Anytime you need to build a power plant or you want to install a project or something like that, it's going to create pollution, and you have to pay these points either from areas that you control or from your own hand. You'll have some of your own in order to build things throughout the game. Now, in addition, you can see that there are some pawns on the board. These are scientists that players are going to be able to get. Each player starts with 1, and they'll get more later. Players are going to have these little discs that are going to mark ownership on things and will show their expertise in different types of green energy. In addition, you're going to see over here that there are these project tiles, and these are in different types of green energy. You have forestation and recycling, solar energy, biomass, and I honestly can't remember what this one is right now, but another one. And there are projects that you'll propose. You'll then take those proposed projects and someone will install them, and then once you've got an installed project, you can use that project in order to build a power plant, which will provide green energy to the world. So that's what those are. In the center of the board here, you can see some more points that you can buy, the carbon emission points. You can buy those from a market. You'll also see that there's these little rectangular pieces here, and they show on them different types of energy. In this case, you have solar, biomass, and recycling. And that's going to dictate what types of energy the region below it will accept. In between these, you'll see that there are little tiles with locations on them and 2 different types of energy, in this case, biomass and recycling. And this is going to be a summit that the scientists can attend in order to earn expertise in the types of energy that are listed there. Also, you can see we have a deck of cards over here that depict regions. For example, this one here is North America. These are areas of the world that will be in danger if the levels of pollution get too high. So you're going to want to try and protect these areas, and if they get into trouble, people who aren't contributing green energy are going to have to pay these little technology resource cubes to them or lose victory points. Now, I've set up most of the board, but the remainder of the board needs to be set up, and the reason I want to show this on video is because it kind of dictates how the game is going to flow a little bit. And at the beginning of the game, you're going to put one of these non-green power plants, these kind of fossil fuel burning plants out in each zone to satisfy the energy demands of the area. And you'll see that these are different types of plants. For example, this one is coal, and it says on it here it increases the CO2 emissions by 40. This is going to dictate what the starting CO2 is of the game. So that one's 40. This one here is some type of, looks like maybe wood burning, and it's 20. So 40 plus 20, we have another 40 here, is going to be, we're at 100 now, plus an oil is 30. Grab a couple more for these last regions. Another 40 is 170, and another 40 is going to be 210. And at this point, we're going to take this black marker and we're going to mark the current CO2 levels at 210. That's fine, but if it gets up above 350, bad things start happening. These areas over here that are up for potential disasters will be hit by disasters, and if it gets up to 500, the players all lose the game. Now that we're set up, we're going to move on to the main play of CO2. Now, in addition to their starting scientist and their little control markers and their carbon emission points, each player is going to get some cards at the start of the game that they can use during their turn to take special effects, and these are called lobby cards. Each player will get 5 of them. But these cards can be used for one of 2 effects on your turn, and you can use 1 card per turn in the game if you want, but no, you only have 5 throughout the game. So you'll have things like this one here. they have two options on them. The bottom option says you can take one of these carbon emission points from the market and add it to your supply, and you don't have to do anything to do this other than play the card. However, the other one says that when you install a project, that's what this wrench means at the top, and that is a cold fusion project, you can take 2 tech resource cubes. And you'll need those cubes for various things, such as building factories or contributing to areas that are hit by a disaster. And you'll have other ones here. For example, this one says when you go to the market, you get points for buying the CEPs from the market, or you can take one of your scientists if you don't want to use the action. So these cards will affect different things. Sometimes you'll have to take an action to use them. Sometimes you can just use them at the bottom to get whatever the thing is without having to take the action. But everyone will have those. Now, once we start the game, we're going to usually, each round, go through what's called a supply phase. In the supply phase, people are going to get income. And income is going to be based on your expertise in different areas, and that's tracked on these tracks down here. Now, as you get more expertise, you'll move up on the tracks, and you'll see there's numbers on them. For example, 5 here, or 4 there, 3 over here. And wherever you're at on this track, if you're in first or second place on the track, you will get income. And you're going to get the income next to the number that you're at. So in this case, it would be 5 if orange was here, or 4 if they were there. And you'll add up all of your income for anywhere that you're in first or second place on the track, and you'll get that income divided between money and victory points, however you decide. So if you were to get 9, you could take 5 victory points and 4 money, however you wanted to divide it up. After that, you're going to go to what's called the supply energy phase, and you're going to look at what decade it is. Now, this doesn't happen in the first turn, but you're going to look at what decade it is, and right now we're in the first decade. And you're going to look and see, okay, there's a power plant in each of the areas here for the first decade, but when we got to the second decade, any area that didn't have a green power plant would have to get a non-green power plant, a fossil fuel burning plant, and that's going to increase the CO2 levels like you saw when I was setting up. So, if it was the second decade, each of these areas that didn't have another plant would have to have a second one put out, and it would increase this one by 30, for example. So now we'd be at 240, and we're getting closer and closer to disasters happening in areas, whatever area is showing, and getting closer to the 500 CO2 level that is going to destroy the world, and the players won't have anywhere to live anymore, so no point in trying to lower CO2 emissions. Now, any area that has that happen, any area where you have to place one of these fossil fuel burning plants, is going to have to pay one of their CEPs to the market. This is important because these are going to dictate some money that you get for building things in that area and various other things. But either whoever controls the area, which we'll go over control shortly later, or the area itself, as no one controls it, has to pay one of these CEPs from that area or from their hand or another area they control if someone controls it. After you've done that for each area, increase the CO2 levels and so forth and so on, you're going to resolve any events that might happen. Now, in the first turn this won't happen, but later on in the second decade, the event would be in North America potentially, and that will only happen if the CO2 ppm is over 350. If it's under 350, nothing will happen. But if it's over 350, a disaster happens in North America. And we'd look at North America. Whoever had built a power plant in that region, a green power plant, doesn't have to do anything. But anybody who doesn't have a power plant built there is going to have to contribute tech cubes to that area or lose victory points. So you'll want to make sure you're either built in an area or able to contribute the tech points in order to not lose those VP. Once we've done that, and we're going to do that each decade, you're going to go on to what's called the operations phase. And this is basically where players are going to take their actions. During the operations phase, players are going to go in turn order, taking a number of actions that depends on how many players there are in the game. So in a 3-player game, you're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds of actions, and that's just shown by this little yellow marker. It's going to be the spot that you're on, and all the way up to this blank spot on the board. You may not be able to say it, but it's just a round tracker. The more players you have, the fewer actions you'll get. The fewer players you have, the more actions you'll get. But on your turn, you can take one of 3 actions. You have to take one, and there are only 3 that you can take. Now, the first is that you can propose a project. When you propose a project, you're going to take one of these things here. This one is for cold fusion, but they have the same thing for biomass. Or they have them for solar. They all just look like the energy. And you're going to place it out into a region, one of these regions that accepts that type of power. So let's say I wanted to propose solar, and I wanted to propose it over here in Asia. Well, we can see that Asia does take solar. And I get to propose it on any one of these 3 spots here. Now, these 3 spots give me options of benefits to get from placing this out here. So this one says I can take money equal to the number of CEPs in this area. So you'll see the more CEPs, the better. I would get 4 money. This one here says if I place it here, I can get 2 tech cubes, and this one says I can take one of my scientists or move one of my scientists from one place to another. So I'll cover moving scientists momentarily, but I could get another scientist or move one somewhere by placing this out. The second potential action you can take is to install an already proposed project. So you'll see they go from proposed to installed, and in order to install them, you're going to flip it over. You have to pay a CEP from your hand, one of these purples, and you have to pay this to the bank. And you're going to get the reward that is on the project. So you'll see this one here, and all of the solar ones are going to give 3 tech cubes. Other ones may give you different things. For example, recycling here is going to give you $5 and a CEP from the market. You'll get biomass, which will give you $3, a cube, and a CEP from the market. So depending on what you're installing, you'll get different benefits. So that's the second option. And the third option is to actually build a power plant matching an installed project in an area. Now, in order to do this, you have to have several things, and one of them is something we haven't covered yet, which is expertise. Now, the way to get expertise is that you have scientists, and these scientists are going to give you expertise. What you can do as a free action on your turn, in addition to any of your other actions, so one of the 3, propose, install, or construct, you can use your scientists, and you can move them to a project that isn't already inhabited by a scientist. So, for example, if this were a proposed project, I could move my scientist onto my own proposed project. I don't technically own it, but the scientist is now on there. I proposed it, and the scientist is on there. If at any point someone else wants to install my project, they're going to have to pay me. And they're going to pay me a coin to remove my scientist, and I have a choice. I can either take an expertise in the type of project it was, so I would move up 1 on the solar expertise, or I can take this scientist and send him to what is called a summit. And it's going to have to be a summit in this area here that matches the expertise. So you'll see Zurich here has a solar expertise on it. So I could send my scientist to the summit in Zurich. And he would sit there until that summit is finished, and then he would earn expertise. And the summit's going to finish by someone else placing a scientist from their pool in a similar manner, or in possibly a different manner, onto the forestation part of Zurich. So you'll see it has a forestation and a solar. And when this is complete, at the end of the turn, you're going to resolve the summit. And for each spot you're on, you're going to earn an expertise in that type. So for example, if orange was on solar, they'd get another solar, and yellow was on forestation, they would get their expertise in forestation. After that, you're going to replace this with a new summit tile, and the game will continue on. So we'd put a new summit tile out. This one has 3 different expertises on it. It's got a biomass, a cold fusion, and a recycling. And it would go out, and the game would continue. Now, in addition to the ones that you get for having your guy placed on there, you're actually going to get a bonus of one of the different types on here. So if I had my orange placed on solar and the yellow on the forestation, orange would also get to choose either another solar or a forestation in addition to the one that they got for placing their guy there. So you get whatever you've got placed there plus 1 bonus of whatever type you want from the summit that's completed. So they could take a forestation as well, and perhaps yellow took a second forestation as their bonus. Now, there are other ways to get scientists and to get expertise. As a free action on your turn, you can also move a scientist anywhere you want, and I said this earlier, but I could move my scientist to this solar. And at the end of my turn, I can always take 1 expertise from one of the areas where I have a scientist. So if I had a scientist on a forestation somewhere, and I had a scientist on this solar, I could choose between solar and forestation in order to get my expertise. So I have a choice. Maybe I take solar. And you'll see your expertise will go up, which will be how you get income later in the game. Now, the reason I've gone into all of this explanation about expertise and scientists and so forth is because you're going to need expertise in order to build factories from proposed projects. So, when you have a project and it's already been installed, meaning that it's been flipped over, maybe it has a scientist on it, but you want to build a power plant matching that type of a proposed project. So I want to build a solar power plant. And there are power plants that match all of these different types. They're going to look like this. And they have requirements on them to build them. You'll see at the bottom it shows 2 of these tech cubes that you'll earn throughout the game, either by placing your guys out here, or some of them will be placed into the areas when disasters happen. So you'll see this requires 2 tech cubes. That means it also requires at least 2 expertise, meaning the second spot of expertise on the track. So once I'm here, and it actually shows it on there, I can construct solar plants. So I need 2 tech cubes, I need to have at least 2 expertise, and it's going to cost me $10 to build this plant. If I do so, I'm going to replace the project out there, I'm going to take the project off, and I'm going to build the power plant in the furthest left spot that isn't already inhabited by a plant. At this point, I'm going to put an ownership disc on it. And I'm also going to have control of this area, and I'm going to score 8 victory points. So I'm going to go up 8 victory points. I would have a marker to track that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 over here. And so now it's actually over on this side. I have it all set up wrong, but 8 victory points on that side. And basically, you're going to score your victory points. You're going to have control of a region now. And the way you determine control is it's whoever contributes the most different types of power that are accepted by that area to that region. So right now, orange is the only one there. Now, if someone else were to have a power there that's accepted, let's say that green has built over here at some point, they both have one type of power. But solar is the preferred type of power, noted at the top of this chart here. So they now have control. If they were both to have 2 different types of power, you'd always look at who has the most, then you'd look at who has the better, and then if those are equal, you'd look at who has higher expertise, and that person would control the region, and mark that region with a control disk, which is going to give them control of all of the CEPs of that region for paying for various different things, but also they're going to get the penalties if you have to install a fuel-burning power plant. In addition to all of the other benefits I told you about, when you install a power plant, you gain an expertise in that type of power. So, you know, you'll already have a bunch of expertise in it, and building the power plants furthers that expertise even more. So there's reasons to do that. There's a lot of reasons, mostly victory points, but also control and various other things. At certain points in the game, you'll actually have built all of these up, and you can replace the fuel-burning power plants with green power plants, which will give you more CEPs to that region, will allow you to lower the parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, and give you, keep you from losing the game entirely by having the world destroyed. Anyhow, those are the 3 actions. They're going to be propose, install, and construct different factories. And we've already gone over one of the free actions, which is scientist. Now, another free action is you can buy these CEPs from the market. Anytime a CEP comes into the game, it's going to come from the market, and when it gets to the bottom, the price is going to go up and more are going to come in. You can also sell CEPs to the market, and the price will go down and you'll get that much money. But you can only buy or sell on your turn, and that's a free action. The final free action is going to be the play the cards that I showed you earlier. You can either play one of those cards that I showed you earlier, the lobby cards, for its effects, or there are cards called UN cards, which are going to score you points for buying them. You'll see that they have icons on them. This one has a solar, a biomass, and a cold fusion. And if you've built all of these, you can pay one of your tech resources back to the supply and take this card and earn the victory points on it. And there are several of these, worth more or less victory points, for more or fewer different types of factories that you have to have built. So these are going to be a way to get victory points during the game. And when you buy them, you'll set them aside, and you can earn more victory points at the end if you've got the most of them. In addition to those, each player is going to have a over-encompassing goal that they get dealt at the beginning of the game. And these are their overall goal cards. Some of them may be, you get 4 points for each area that you control at the end of the game, up to a maximum of 16 points. Or, if you don't want that at the end of the game, you can trade it in for $8. Some of them may be you get 3 points for each of the UN cards that you complete. Or you get 3 points for each zone that you have a factory built in. Whatever it may be. Anyhow, after everybody's gone through and done their action, you'll start a new round of actions until you've completed all of the actions for that decade, and then you will advance the decade marker. You will pass the first player marker to the next person. You will reset the token back at the number of players so you can track how many action rounds you have, and you'll go through another one of the supply phases, again, where you distribute income, figure out if everybody has enough power out here, and then resolve any events that happen from the CO2 level rising, and continue on, maybe continuing the game, maybe losing the game, but continuing on until either the PPM goes over 500, or you go through all 5 rounds, 6 in a 5-player game, or until 2 areas are completely filled with green plants, or there are various other ways the game can end. But overall, at the end of the game, you're going to score money for the number of victory points you have, for the amount of money you have, the victory points you already have on the board. You'll score points for your UN cards if you have the most, for region control if you have the most, and whoever has the most points through all of these various different things, trying to balance out building green power with trading off with other players, is going to be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is CO2 by Vital Lacerda and Stronghold Games. Now, this game, as you can tell, has a lot going on. It looks like it has a lot going on, and it sounds like it has a lot going on, and I guess it does have a lot going on. But the thing is that when you get down, you sit down and you play a turn of it, everything kind of falls together. I mean, you're really only going through that supply phase, income, adding power plants, doing the disasters, and then you go through your operations phases, you take your actions, and it's one action per player, a couple of little bonus actions of moving scientists around or buying and selling CEPs, perhaps playing a card, but it's all fairly quick. The trick is to balance out getting the right proposals in the right areas, sometimes, or a lot of the time, using your own proposals to install a project, and then using your own project to build a power plant. But sometimes you're going to want to jump in on somebody else's proposal, use that, flip it over, pay to move their scientist, maybe they'll get some expertise or move it to a summit, and they get a slight benefit from that, but you get yourself into a position where you can build or you get the benefit from a project that's installed that you really wanted to get. You know, you get some more CEPs or you get some more tech cubes or whatever the case may be. So it's a balancing act of trying to work together to keep pollution low, which you definitely have to do. You will likely destroy the world the first time you play the game, but also to compete with everybody else in order to get the most victory points. The game is beautiful, it has a great design, it doesn't feel like it takes a long time to play, and it really doesn't take that long to play once you've got everything figured out. But I think there's a lot of great aspects to this game. It's a very good strategy game with a great theme, and one that I think a lot of heavier gamers are really going to enjoy. That's CO2 from Vital Lacerda and Stronghold Games.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.